The body they pulled from Adewale's bedroom had no business being wet. There was no rain that night. No flood. No broken pipe. The nearest river was half a mile from the village of Ojoomi, and yet Tinuola lay on the floor beside their sleeping mat, her wrapper soaked through, river grass tangled in her hair, and her eyes wide open, staring at something on the ceiling that no living person could see. The village women who came to wash her body refused to speak about what they found beneath her fingernails. The elder who prepared her for burial drank himself senseless that same evening and never explained why. But Adewale knew. God help him, Adewale knew exactly what had come for his wife in the night. He had invited it himself. 3 months before Tinuola drowned on dry land, Adewale had been a man with nothing. His farm had failed 2 seasons in a row. His roof leaked. His children ate once a day if the neighbors were generous. He had watched Tinuola sell her gold earrings, the ones her mother had given her on their wedding day, just to buy yam flour, and something inside him had broken permanently that afternoon. A man was supposed to provide. A man was supposed to protect. Adewale was doing neither, and the shame of it sat in his chest like a stone he could not cough out. It was old Baba Layawola who first mentioned the river. Not directly, the old man was too clever for that. He simply said, while sharpening a blade outside his hut one evening, that there were older powers in Ojoomi than the ones people prayed to in church or mosque. Powers that listened when men were desperate. Powers that rewarded courage. He said nothing more, and Adewale said nothing back. But 3 nights later, when the moon was swallowed by clouds and the village was silent, Adewale walked alone to the river with a white egg, a bottle of honey, and a fear so thick he could taste it on his tongue. She was already waiting. He did not see her rise from the water. One moment the river was empty, silver and still beneath the hidden moon, and the next she was simply there, standing on the surface as though the water were solid ground beneath her feet. She was beautiful in a way that made Adewale's eyes hurt, beautiful in a way that felt like a warning he was too desperate to heed. Her skin held the darkness of deep water. Her hair floated around her head as though she were still submerged. She smiled at him, and every instinct God had placed in Adewale's body screamed at him to run. He stayed. "You want wealth," she said. Her voice came from everywhere and nowhere, from inside the river and inside his own skull simultaneously. It was not a question. "Yes," Adewale whispered. "And what will you give me?" He had prepared an answer. He offered his years, 10 years from the end of his life. She smiled wider and said nothing. He offered his voice, she tilted her head like he had said something amusing. He offered his land, his labor, his firstborn son's name. Each offer was met with that same terrible smile and that same unbearable silence. Then she looked at him with eyes the color of river bottom and said, very softly, "I will take what I choose. When I choose. Do you accept?" Adewale thought about Tinuola's gold earrings. He thought about his children's empty stomachs. He thought about the stone in his chest that never stopped pressing. "Yes," he said. "I accept." She was gone before the word finished leaving his mouth. The river was empty and still. Adewale walked home in the dark and told himself the cold he felt had nothing to do with fear. Within 2 weeks, everything changed. A cousin he had never met died in the city and left him money, more money than Adewale had seen in his entire life. His farm began producing yields that made neighboring farmers come and stare in silence. A merchant from the city offered him a contract that tripled his income overnight. Tinuola got her gold earrings back, new ones, heavier than the originals, and she laughed for the first time in months when Adewale placed them in her hands. He told himself he had been foolish to be afraid. He told himself it had been a dream at the river that night, nothing more. He almost believed it. Then one morning he woke before dawn to find Tinuola's side of the mat empty. He found her on the floor beside the doorway. Soaked. River grass in her hair. Eyes open and fixed on something Adewale could not see. He screamed her name until his voice broke. He shook her until his arms gave out. She was already cold. She had been cold for hours. And in the silence after his screaming, with the whole village gathering outside his door and his children crying behind him, Adewale heard something beneath the noise that stopped his blood entirely. He heard the river. Half a mile away, in the dead of pre-dawn stillness, he heard it moving. And within that movement he heard something else, low and rhythmic and patient, the way a hunter sounds when they are not chasing but simply waiting, because they already know exactly where their prey will be. She had not taken 10 years from the end of his life. She had taken Tinuola instead. And from the sound of the river growing louder each night after that, louder on the second night, louder still on the third, loud enough by the seventh night that Adewale pressed his hands over his ears and wept on the floor, he understood with absolute certainty that Tinuola had not been the payment. Tinuola had been the message. On the 9th night the river was so loud inside Adewale's head that he could not speak, could not eat, could not look at his children without hearing it drown out their voices. On the 10th night he stood up from his mat at midnight without knowing he had decided to stand. He walked out of his hut without knowing he had decided to walk. His feet found the path to the river in the darkness without needing his eyes. Behind him, his eldest son woke and saw his father's back disappearing into the night and ran after him screaming so loud the whole village woke and followed. They reached the riverbank just in time to see Adewale walk into the water without slowing, without hesitating, without once looking back. The river took him to the knees, then the waist, then the shoulders. His son screamed his name from the bank. The village men waded in after him, grabbing, reaching, pulling at nothing but water. By the time they were waist deep the river was empty. Adewale was gone. The wealth disappeared with him, every coin, every contract, every unexplained yield. The new gold earrings Tinuola had worn were found on the riverbank the next morning, half buried in the mud, tarnished black as though they had been underwater for 100 years. In Ojoomi they do not speak his name near water. They do not go to the river after dark. And on certain still nights, when the moon hides and the village is quiet, the elders say you can hear something beneath the current, low and patient and deeply, terribly satisfied. The river does not forget. And it never releases what it owns.